Hi. The laws governing India's securities markets and its securities markets regulator, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, are up for an overhaul. Last month, the finance minister tabled the Securities Markets Code bill in the parliament. This bill seeks to consolidate decades old laws governing SEBI, stock exchanges, depositories, and the way securities contracts are executed in India. The bill has been referred to a select committee of the parliament for consideration. Now, generally, securities markets governance and policy are not politically salient enough for parliamentarians to take a deep look at them. Parliamentarians really pay attention to securities markets governance related matters, either when there is a scam which affects thousands of retail investors, or when there are other shocks, such as, for example, the Hindenburg report on the Adani group of companies. That said, the Securities Markets Code, its significance, the bill that has been tabled in the parliament, cannot be overstated. If it is enacted as law, it will, for the foreseeable future, influence how Indian firms raise capital, how much investors trust trading on India's stock exchanges, and most importantly, how independent and accountable will SEBI remain in the near future. Therefore, the Securities Markets Code bill is no ordinary legislative measure, and parliamentarians must pay deep attention to its provisions. In the next few weeks, in my finance and governance column, I will break down various elements of this bill and, in financial markets jargon, describe some of its upside and downside. In today's column in the print, I argue that I talk about the regulatory governance aspects, some regulatory governance aspects of the Securities Markets Code bill. I argue that the bill makes significant progress on the process that SEBI must follow for making regulations, but it significantly falters in delegating excessive enforcement powers on SEBI. Now, what are regulations? Regulations are very much like law. They are made by a regulatory authority, not by parliament, and they apply to the entire market or a specific segment of it. So this bill builds in requirements of transparency and proportionality in regulation making. It requires SEBI to publish draft regulations, to invite public comments, and publish its own responses to the public comments before enacting a regulation, all of which are very good things. It also builds in norms of proportionality and transparency and effectiveness of SEBI's own regulations. It requires SEBI to review its regulations periodically, all very good things. However, the bill significantly falters in delegating excessive direction-making powers on SEBI. Even today, SEBI has open-ended direction-making powers. That means it can issue directions to any intermediary, any market participant, any exchange, any listed issuer, any person associated with the securities markets. The bill not only retains this open-ended direction-making power, in fact, it expands it, and it dilutes the standards to be followed for issuing such directions. The grounds on which such directions may be issued are rather wide. SEBI may issue such directions in the interest of investors, to secure the proper management of a market participant, or for the orderly development of the securities markets, all very wide terms. So these directions may be issued not only when SEBI believes that a wrongdoing is that somebody is engaging in some sort of violation of the law. The grounds of issuing such directions are rather wide. What kind of directions may be issued? The scope of these directions, again, is not defined in the law, and an indicative list that has been given in the law is not very confidence inspiring. So, for example, under this bill, SEBI may issue a direction to cancel or annul exchange traded contracts, or to reverse trades, or to suspend the clearing of any trade that has happened on an exchange. Now, this is deeply troubling. The reason why you and I are so confident of trading on exchanges with anonymous people is because we are confident that once a trade goes through, it will be honored. Contracts executed on exchanges, trades executed on exchanges are sacrosanct. Therefore, empowering SEBI to issue directions to annul or cancel exchange traded contracts, can challenge the very idea of exchange trading, and it deserves a serious relook. SEBI has used such direction making powers in the past for various kinds of things. In fact, most of its enforcement actions, 30% of its enforcement actions, are issued through directions. Sometimes it uses these exchange making powers even to ban financial products. So, for example, more recently, SEBI used these direction making powers to ban certain commodity trading in certain agricultural commodities such as paddy and wheat and chana. And therefore, the grounds are wide, the purposes for which they may be issued are wide, and what is the nature of the directions also remains undefined. There are many problems with retaining and expanding the scope of such direction making powers. First, SEBI seems to enjoy a reasonably high success rate in its own enforcement proceedings. It separately has the power to issue interim orders and cease and desist orders. Therefore, the reason for retaining such open-ended direction-making powers remains unclear. Second, through case law and practice, SEBI generally gives a hearing before issuing such a direction to a specific market participant. Now, it is unclear why this practice has not been codified in the bill, especially if it's, done as a matter of course. Third, while the SEBI Act empowers a whole-time member of the board currently to issue such directions, the bill actually proposes that an adjudication officer may issue such directions. So it is diluting the standards for the issuance of such open-ended directions. And finally, these directions are particularly problematic in a law which also empowers the government to issue open-ended directions to SEBI. So there are two levels of direction making happening here. First, the government may issue directions to SEBI. Second, SEBI may issue directions to a market participant. The implication of this is that SEBI may issue directions to a participant that actually reflects the policy preferences of the government. And if we are indeed comfortable with this scenario, we must question, why do we need an independent securities markets regulator to begin with? Reforms of the scale and kind, such as a securities market code bill, which is right now being considered by parliamentarians, do not happen frequently. They should not happen frequently. If this bill goes through as law, it will, for the near future, define how India's securities markets operate and how much power is exercised by SEBI. Now, the fact that there is a consolidated law which will govern India's securities markets is very encouraging. However, given that increasing swathes of the Indian economy are now coming under regulatory purview, questions of how much power is delegated to such technocratic regulators can no longer be confined to committees, classrooms, and courtrooms. How much power is delegated? How will it be used? How can it be contested? How can it be checked? Are all questions that are real questions that affect thousands of intermediaries, capital issuers, and stock market participants and investors. The parliamentarians owe it to them to deeply scrutinize this bill and ask questions of every single power that is being delegated to SEBI. Thank you.